right, it's March here and it's the time change, so with a little bit warmer weather and a little bit more daylight in the evening, I got my mind thinking a little bit about this summer and making some trips south to do a little saltwater fishing. And I wanted to do a how-to video on how to get started shark fishing. And when I do this, I'm talking more about catching sharks in the 3 to 6 foot range, but not talking about dragging in a 12-foot hammerhead. The tackle that I'm going to go over is geared more toward landing something up to about 6 feet long, probably not much bigger than that. If you hook on to much bigger than that, probably going to have a broken line and a story to tell. So I'm going to go over some of the things you might need in order to get into a little bit of shark fishing, and maybe you're on a family vacation and you want to try to catch something with a little bit of size to it, or maybe you go south and you've fished quite a bit, but you've never gotten into fishing for sharks. So I'm going to go through just a few things that you'll need in order to get into shark fishing. All right, so the first thing that you'll obviously need, you'll need some sort of a fishing license depending on where you're going. You'll need to provide the information and get a saltwater license, and you can purchase a 14-day saltwater license normally for a real reasonable fee. If you're going to be there longer, you can go ahead and purchase a year-long license. Normally saltwater fishing licenses aren't too bad. If you're fishing on a pier, you normally don't need a saltwater license. However, I don't recommend fishing for sharks from a pier. So I'm going to go through just some of the equipment that I have here that I take with me. First off, I've got some stainless fishing pliers. These are just normal stainless pliers bought off of eBay real cheap. Long-handled set of fishing pliers just in case you get a hook stuck. And the other thing I recommend is a hook remover, and I actually sell these stainless hook removers. You can buy those off of eBay under ITSME-ITSME, the economical fish hook remover. So anyhow, I recommend something like that. I don't have them here, but a pair of bolt cutters also handy. You'll see when you buy a pair of pliers like this, saltwater tends to have their way and causes them to rust pretty fast. As far as equipment goes, the first rod here that I'm going to talk about, this is a pin. It's on a Power Plus rod. And the nice thing about this one actually has a bait clicker, so you can cast it out and just flip that back. And when a fish picks up your bait and it goes running with it, it'll just pretty much free spool, small amount of tension. All you got to do is pick it up and start reeling. That's a little more expensive. It's spooled with 65-pound braided line. Here's the 65-pound braid that I use on it. I use braided line on that one so I can get a little more line on the reel. It's not a great big reel, so it's kind of handy for surf fishing to have something that holds a little more line, and if you go with braid, you can do that. Now, with that said, I'm not dead set on braided line. This one, a little bit cheaper combo. This actually, I picked this up. This is also a 10-foot combo, two-piece combo, two-piece, so I can get a 10-foot rod in the vehicle to get it south. This I actually picked up out of Walmart in South Carolina. This one here, I think I picked up for like $20 or $25. The reel wasn't working, and I bought it actually for the rod. I liked the rod well enough that I decided to buy it and did a little bit of work on the reel, and I've got it working fairly well. There were some problems with it automatically flipping the bail over, and I've got it to where it works fairly well, so I actually put the reel back into service just as a cheap reel. Sometimes sharks can definitely tear the gears out of a reel, so even a cheaper combo is not bad. I think that combo was originally maybe $30 or $40 prior to them discounting it due to the malfunction with the reel. It's spooled with monofilament. I like either 25 or 30. 25 is nice because you can get a little bit more line on there again, so you can cast out a little further. And believe it or not, for sharks up to about 6 feet in length, you don't have to have 60 or 80 pound test on there. You can fight them pretty well, and monofilament's a little more forgiving. It'll stretch a little more, whereas the braided line, if it's tight and they nick it up against any kind of shells or anything, it's really bad about breaking. So again, I use it because it holds a little bit more. Has its advantages, but it definitely has its disadvantages to monofilament. The next combo I'm going to talk about, and I use this one for a long time. This is actually just a 6-foot heavy action rod, and just to show you that you don't have to have something super heavy. I do some catfishing, and believe it or not, what I use for sharks is actually a little bit lighter than what I use for a high river catfish, but this is a 4,000 open face spinning reel. It's also spooled with 40-pound braided line, and again, it's just a 6-foot combo. For surf fishing, it's a little bit tough to get it casted out far enough if they're in the breaks of the waves, and sometimes the sharks will be. It works out fine. You can drag them pretty well out of the breaks, but if you got to cast out much further than that, you're really limited due to that smaller reel. I did use it for a while fishing on piers, but again, I don't really recommend shark fishing on piers. A lot of times the locals that go there to fish for dinner, they kind of frown upon it as well. The next thing here, I've got a rod holder. Honestly, you can get a piece of PVC pipe, do the exact same thing. Just cut the end of it on an angle, and you can shove that right into the sand. Just something to hold the rod unless you're going to stand there and hold it the entire time. Normally I'm fishing for bait on another rod at the same time while I've got one casted out shark fishing. As far as bait goes, any legal fish that you catch that you can cut up and put back on there, as long as it's legal to do that with, most of the time they will eat it. A lot of times they'll eat whatever it is you're catching. That's what they're in there feeding on. So there's not, in my opinion, a magic bait. Just whatever they're feeding on, as long as it's legal, cut it up, throw it back out there, and a lot of times they'll bite on that. Along those lines, talking about legal bait, you also, aside from a license, you need to check not only state laws, but also some counties have ordinances against, some of them have specific ordinances against shark fishing. Some of them say against fishing in a way that endangers swimmers. So if you're shark fishing while someone's out swimming, you're probably going to have an issue. Again, I recommend you go real early in the morning or real late at night. And if someone's there swimming, honestly, the best thing you can do is move somewhere else. Don't confront them, try to get them out of the water. Just move and go elsewhere. A lot of times if they're in the water, the sharks won't come in there anyhow. You're better off just to move. But again, check local ordinances. Like I say, some of them in cities will not allow you to shark fish. They don't want tourists knowing that there's sharks in the water. So they have laws against it. And same thing with county ordinances as well. So just pay attention to those and be careful about where and when you do your fishing, and everything should be fine. All right, so obviously you'll need enough lead to get the weight out there and to hold it at the bottom. There are some other ways to get baits out. I normally cast them out. People do kayak them out. Sometimes I've heard of people using drones, and then I've heard of people catching live bait and just hooking it back on and letting it free swim without a sinker. But again, depending on how rough the current is, I normally use anywhere from a 2 to a 4 ounce pyramid sinker to hold the weight or to hold the bait on bottom. The next thing here, this is some leader line where I tie my own leaders, and this is not real expensive. This is coated leader line here. It's 80-pound test. Again, not real heavy. Someone that's fishing for something over 8 feet long is probably going to use something considerably heavier than that. I like the coated line. Sometimes it seems like they're being really finicky, and the coated line, you get a little bit more hits. Now this is not coated line here, and this is a 135-pound test, and I've caught them on it, but if they're being really finicky on the bite, a lot of times it seems like that black coated line will produce a little bit better results. Again, the 80-pound does break a little bit easier than the 135, but sometimes you got to switch to it just to get them to hit. And then if I'm going all out, I'll actually double this up. This is a 61 single strand, but like I said, I'll double this up and make my leaders out of it. Again, all of these are pretty reasonable, but I'm going to show you some other options here as well. And then the last thing I have here, this is 80-pound monofilament, and I take this just in case I need something to put on there with the leader to give it a little bit of stretch, or maybe there's some sharp shelves, especially with my reel that's got the braided line on it. Sometimes I'll go ahead and put a mono leader on with a short steel leader as well, just in case that gets into the sharp part of the shells on the shelves and things. That way they don't get nicked. Here's a handful of leaders that I use. This one's got, I believe, a 14-aught circle hook, and that's the 135-pound 7-strand line. It's got a 3-way swivel. I normally just use a clip, one of these clips right here to clip on a sinker, and this one actually has a slide on it depending. Sometimes I'll use it directly with a three-way swivel, and then sometimes I'll actually use it with the slide. I've got both setups depending on what seems to work best for the day. This is another one, again, pretty much a similar setup to that. Then we get into these here, and this is, if you're just getting into it, these 2 leaders here in the middle, you can actually buy these. These are called bluefish rigs, and you can see they're a little rusty, which I'm not at all bothered by rusty hooks. I'll take that and I'll take an emery board and I'll knock a little bit of a edge there on that. I actually like the fact that the hooks rust fast. That way, if they break off a few days in salt water, that'll rust out of the mouth of the shark, and you don't have to worry about that leader or any excess line being drug along too long with that. But these are bluefish rigs, and you can actually purchase these at most Walmarts down south will carry these. You normally get 1 or 2 of them for like $3 or $4. They're, I think, 80-pound coated line. If you're just getting started, one of those with a sinker slide like this with the plastic and then a clip on it, put that on, put 4 ounces on, chunk up whatever it is you're catching, sling it out there and see what happens. It's a good way to get started, and I've caught plenty of big sharks on setups just like that. Here's another one that I've got, and this one actually has some mono on with it. This one is the 61-pound doubled up line here with a haywire twist there on the circle hook. I do like the circle hooks to get a good corner of the mouth hook set, but as you can see, I've got a few here with the J hooks. Those bluefish rigs with J hooks are fine. And then here's a few that I've actually built, ordered some J hooks off of eBay, just some cheaper. They're like a Gamakatsu copy. I use real Gamakatsus with catfish, but the copy's actually for sharks. Normally the bite is strong enough that you'll get a good hook set still with those. Again, here's a pack of the 14-aught, and like I said, this is a good heavy-duty circle hook. Does help because it gets you a good corner of the mouth hook set. Also, aside from those, I will use this style right here of circle hook. Not quite as heavy. I believe that's a 9 or a 10-aught circle hook. I have had a few of those break, but it's really rare that you actually will break a hook. So like I say, those are actually pretty good and normally heavy enough. These are maybe a little bit overkill and definitely more expensive if you go to pick those up. All right, so if you're looking to get into this and you don't want to spend a whole lot of money, I would recommend something like this. I do like a 10-foot rod, not really much longer than a 10-footer, probably not much shorter than an 8. I know there's some people that definitely prefer a 12 in order to sling it out there a little bit more. Problem is, if you go much over a 10, a lot of times the tips of them will get really flimsy, and you put a big heavy piece of bait on there, not uncommon to break those tips if they're not heavy enough. So like I said, at a Walmart, most places anywhere along an ocean area, you can go in, you can pick these things up. Probably, like I say, $40, maybe $60 at the most. You can go in and pick something up plenty heavy enough. Make sure it reels smooth, make sure it's got a good drag on it, make sure the rod has got some stiffness to it, but otherwise not a whole lot there to get started. Monofilament, again, you can pick this up for less than $5 for enough to spool the thing a few different times. Again, this is just the basics if you want to get into it cheap. Some sort of pliers or even a fish dehooker. Again, need to have something like that so you can get the hook out of the mouth. A set of bolt cutters is not bad, but again, if you're just trying to get into it cheap, stop at a Walmart, pick up a rod, get you a set of pliers, get something with cutters on them, piece of PVC pipe or a rod holder, about $5 more for that. And those blue rigs, like I say, you can pick up a couple of those for $5 as well, and some sinkers. So definitely for $100 you can probably get your license and all the gear that you would need, and all you got to do is go out, catch some bait, put it on there, sling it out, sit there and wait, and good luck to you.